short letter size, and then for our quiz after this presentation. Okay. Sige. So MUP 204 deals with economic development, which I think, as we all discovered, is a little bit technical. So I'll try to explain it as much as I can in the next hour. So one of the things I think we didn't establish before the midterms was why cities exist. And I gave a short description last week that said that, oh, number one over here, cities are the result of economic forces of agglomeration, which will be our discussion next week, mediated by technological progress. So that is, urban growth is fueled by economically advantageous divisions of labor, and available technology is the most important constraint of city growth. However, other factors such as political stability, peace, and the control of place areas are also important. So one key thing here I want to highlight is agglomeration, which will be our discussion next week. And let's see here. Not so much other factors, so just agglomeration. Because in this other description, they'll describe why cities agglomerate. And basically, agglomeration is when different communities or groups or businesses come together in a single place. Historically, cities are created when there is a division of labor, such that ancient cities used to have many people, or like majority of their civil society was in charge of agriculture. When technology advanced, less people needed to work on the farm. So this created a new sort of labor, or new division of labor, for lack of a better word. So basically, people stopped farming because they didn't need as many farmers anymore, because there was new technology. So farming required less people. So other professions began to arise. So we have like people could go into selling the food. People started getting into arts. People started getting into like education, and eventually this increase of new activities generated even more jobs. So now there's new labor. So that's basically the summary of definition one. Explanation one. Explanation two is a bit more, I think, user friendly. So cities arise at critical points in the transportation system to facilitate trade between regions. So basically, cities are created because people need to trade. And then due to economic scales in transportation, economies of scale in transportation, shipping is typically cheaper in larger batches. Basically, if there are more people buying or selling a larger bulk of goods and services, it's cheaper to transport them. So this is why cities and transportation are very much linked. So I'll show you the source of this. This is Daniel P. McKellen, Encyclopedia of Social Measurement. So this is again using Science Direct. So if you have a USC account, you should be able to use sciencedirect.com and avail of their like articles here. So I'll just zoom in a bit more. So this is, I think, the most user-friendly explanation of why cities exist. So the starting point of any discussion in urban economics is the question of why cities exist. So in the past, cities remains, this is another explanation, were a means of defense. Walled cities were easier to defend than scattered farms. Cities also served as religious centers, but throughout history, cities have served as trading centers. So talking about urban economics. The question addressed in urban economics is, what is it about a city that starts economic activities? I'll zoom in even a bit more here. So in that definition, cities are critical points in the transportation system that facilitate trade. So today, most cities are located around harbors, rivers, railroads, and highway crossings. These sites offer advantages to large firms that ship their products to different locations. So large firms exist because of international economies of scale. Again, I think we need a definition of economies of scale. I'll just put it over here. Maybe I'll not this one. I think Investopedia is better for this. economies of scale. Okay. So economies of scale are the cost advantages company gain from increasing their output. Basically, just this. So, for example, have you noticed, or if anyone's gone to like a warehouse outlet, it's cheaper to buy goods and services, for example, chips, whatever products in like these warehouse stores. If they're you're buying more, but if you calculate the cost per item, they become cheaper. So that's basically the effect of economies of scale. So this is quite simply the reason why cities are sort of gathering points for businesses, because if they're all in one place, the producers and the sellers and the buyers, they don't need to, they'll eventually spend less than like if they were located further away. That's why geography and transportation come into play. Okay, next, going on further. So large firms employ many workers, and these workers tend to live near their firms. So that's why businesses tend to locate in cities. The concentration of homes in turn attracts stores. So if you have people living in the city, working in the city, you would create an attraction for businesses, restaurants, and other services that cater to the residents. The original transport advantage becomes the catalyst for diverse economic activity that begets more economic activity. So this is a what's the opposite of a vicious cycle? I forgot there was a term for it. But anyways, a positive cycle where more economic activity creates even more businesses. For example, steel in Pittsburgh, meat packaging in Chicago, beer brewing in St. Louis are all examples of industries with internal economies of scale that were attracted to cities offering significant transportation cost advantage. So this is why I found the transportation cost book as sort of like our best resource for market areas. And then cities also attract economic activity because of agglomeration economies. So I guess I'll go back to Investopedia. Agglomeration. So just as a reminder, these Investopedia, Wikipedia articles are not academically correct, but it's good for us to just have a basic definition. Where did I put that? Let's see. Investopedia. An agglomeration economy or synergy is when businesses in different industries are beneficial to each other and they can share resources and opportunities. Unfortunately, they don't have like a nice looking image for us. So basically, agglomeration economy again is when businesses come together because they have like they can benefit from shared resources and opportunities. Okay, where am I? A term used to note cost advantages enjoyed by a firm simply because other firms are located in the vicinity. You can see this in malls, and also I think the most popular in Cebu and I think the Philippines, fast food chains. Whenever you find a Jollibee, there's usually a McDonald's nearby. The benefit of both of them locating near each other is because they serve the same target market. Although there's some kanang competition where they can what do you call this? They might steal customers from one another, but if they're near each other, a lot of people will identify this as a place to get food. And then we will connect this with the concept of a market area. Basically, when Jollibee and McDonald's come together, they increase their market area because they become more well-known and people go there more. So that's the shared benefit. Agglomeration economies are traditionally classified as localization or urbanization economy. So there's so many different kinds of economies. A localization economy is a cost advantage that accrues to all firms operating in an industry as that industry expands within an urban area. So again, when they come together, they benefit from shared resources, basically the land and like the market area of attracting customers. And then a localization economy occurs when this industry expands. For example, let's see, I'll think of a place. University of San Carlos. Carlos. This area of the University of San Carlos is, I think, experiencing this phenomena of localization economy, because in this area, I'll just switch to the map mode. You have the University of San Carlos. Then just a little bit further away, you have University UV Gulyas Medical College. And apart from that, okay, it's not seen here in the map. You have Bright Academy, I think elementary school, and beside that, it's, where is that other one? Woodridge International School. So basically, within this, how many kilometers? Not even 1 kilometer, I think. I think if you go even further, there's another English Academy. Basically, this district of Cebu, this stretch of 900 meters, not even 1 kilometer, already has 5 different kinds of schools. So that's, I think, a good example of what a localization economy looks like. Okay, where am I? Okay. So another example here is Silicon Valley in California's Santa Clara County, which has many small firms that comprise a very large industry. Among other reasons, these firms find it worthwhile to locate in Silicon Valley because it is easy to hire the right workers in an area with a very large concentration of high-tech firms. In contrast, urbanization economies are cost advantages that are enjoyed by firms even when there are few other firms in the urban area in the same industry. So a large urban area provides enough demand that even highly specialized companies find local firms to provide a service, can find local firms to provide a service rather than having to provide the service internally with their own employees at a higher cost. Basically, in cities, for example, if you are a printing company, you need ink, you need workers who know how to use the programs to print. And within a city, you would have colleges, universities to train those people. I don't think maybe you need people to college degrees to learn those programs, but that's a plus. And then you have the materials, for example, tarpaulins, the paper needs to be made somewhere. Someone has to like cut it up, order it, build it. And usually that's also within the same city. And then a clear sort of, again, a clear example of this is really the University of San Carlos, because it's like education is also an industry. And then you can see this area over here where I think I'm 90% sure that USC was the first university in this area, and that eventually attracted other developments. And I think these subdivisions also came here, not just because of the University of St. Carlos, but the other like food establishments, restaurants. I need a better a resource for development in the Talamban area, but history could be a good resource to like justify whether an area is developing because of a, what do you call this, urbanization economies or localization economies. But both of these types fall under agglomeration economies, basically coming together. So that's a bit technical, but we'll get to that next week. Okay. So that's basically why cities exist, because there's a advantage to locating closer to each other. And that connects with our reference of urban economics, which I used to use for this class, but I found it to be too technical. So I reverted, I used Sir Neil's syllabus to be, I followed it more strictly, basically. And there are 5 axioms or principles. We'll just focus on the first one that deals with location. And basically, when the book says prices adjust to achieve locational equilibrium, it means that space or distance define the prices of goods and services. So we mentioned earlier, agglomeration economies exist because it's cheaper for businesses, more profitable for them. And then these businesses come together to attract even more businesses. So what you have is a sort of a, what do you call this? Like a booming city or something like that. But at the flip side, when all the businesses come together in one place, as you go further away from the CBD, you have areas that look like this, and the more rural areas, the less developed areas. So this principle also suggests that when you're closer to a very active economic active area, the prices of goods and services in that area for consumers is a bit what they call this. For example, land in CBDs are more expensive than if they were in the rural areas. But another sort of example of that would be goods and services. For example, goods and services may be less available in rural areas and therefore a bit more expensive. But I think in general, CBDs will still have more expensive land, more expensive goods and services, but it will also, to offset those expensive goods and services, there will be higher wages. So this is why we're talking about economic development, because we want more jobs, higher wages, which in turn creates even more economic development. Okay, and to sort of contextualize this to a Philippine setting, currently the Philippines has adopted the 2023 to 2028 the Philippine Development Plan under the Marcos administration. So we talked about this earlier. We have supposed to be 8 themes under what they call this, several sub-themes. I'm not sure, I still need to review the document. I'm not sure where these icons here, this is under matatag, maginhawa, at panatag na buhay. There's like 6 here, but in the theme section, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, it's really 6. Why do they say 8 in their ads? Because I was confused, because in their ads for the Philippine Development Plan, they say there are 8 themes. But if I go to their website over here, this is the neda.gov.ph. This would be a credible source of information for academic studies. It's a government website creating a real publication that's already turned in, that has been adopted by the national government. And if you click on their introduction for plan of transformation, you'll end up with this document over here. So this is the introduction, plan for economic and social transformation. And they have in the page, it's a bit lower. Okay. Overview of the Philippine Development Plan. This is page 14. They have digitalization. The digital transformation of government will result in more efficient and faster delivery service to the people, more transparency, and fewer opportunities for corruption at various levels. They have servicification, which is a made-up word, fosters intersectoral linkages to create synergies for more value-adding opportunities, expansion of products, markets, and more efficient delivery network. So that's 2. 3 is dynamic innovation and dynamic innovation ecosystem. So innovation will translate knowledge and ideas into new products and or new better processes. Enhanced connectivity, that's 4. As an archipelago, the Philippines has unique challenges with connectivity. Digital connectivity is only one form, as physical connectivity through infrastructure and transport is similarly important to link markets to each other. So connect urban centers to rural areas and facilitate the movement of people, whether for employment, business, and marketing, or even socialization and recreation. And then 5, greater collaboration between local and national government. Oh, I missed that. Wait, let me check. Digitalization, servicification, dynamic innovation, enhanced connectivity, greater collaboration with local national government, and partnership with that. There's only 6. I don't know why they keep saying 8. But yeah, just wanted to highlight these. So these are the goals of the national government. And then in the local level, there should be a local development plan, or like city development plan. So I'm not sure if Cebu City has that. So just wanted to point out these like 6 themes, because that might come out in the quiz later. Okay, so as we discussed several weeks ago already, economic development is a program and not exactly the phenomena of becoming like developed, but it's a series of programs, policies, or activities that seek to improve economic well-being and the quality of life for our community, and or retaining jobs that facilitate growth and provide a stable tax base. So for any city to grow, there needs to be, as we mentioned before, agglomeration, economic activity, meaning there needs to be a population where they need to live, work, and like create that economic, what do you call this? Create those jobs, create those economic activities. So the goal of economic development is to improve or maintain that stable tax base, because that's that's the main source of revenue for cities and governments. And another definition for economic development here is a process of creating wealth through mobilization of human, financial, capital, physical, and natural resources to generate marketable goods and services. So in line with this, we studied, I think, 6 economic development theories. Yeah, 6 again. So I'll just label that. I'll just go over them very quickly because we have to focus on market area. So new classical development theory, economic base theory, location theory, spiral/causation theory, product life cycle theory, and new growth theory. Then there are 2 approaches to economic development. There's a political science approach and economic approach. Bingham 2003 says we should follow the economic approach or a outcomes-based approach. Next, factors that influence business locations. There's 5: inertia, transportation costs, production costs, national political climate and stability, and opportunity creation. So I just wanted to list those. You have the reference for the definition. Then other factors for like identifying business locations. They do a decision-making process, which is basically a site selection process. But first, they need to be motivated. Let's see here. I'll call this 1, 2, 3, and this might be change the format for this. Like that. So they need to be motivated to move in the first place. They need to consider the practical limitations of moving or like creating a business, and then finding the site for their business. Then there's also, according to Blair and Carroll, there are changing importance of business factors. So traditional location factors, even up to 2009, probably all the way up till today, remain the most important. But they are also, traditional locational factors, or TLF, are also diminishing because of innovations in education, basically the behavior of the citizens, business climate, energy, and familiarity with local conditions. So technology, to an extent, has reduced the significance of proximity to raw materials and transportation costs. So raw materials might include labor force and actually the product, the raw materials to create that product, as well as transportation costs. Local taxes have had an impact. So businesses tend to locate where there are less taxes, with similar or more public services are favored. Finally, the range of places that need to be evaluated has expanded to the global scale. So there's a lot of opportunity to do online businesses, especially after COVID, which I think is having a resurgence now. So these are the things that sort of diminish the importance of traditional locational factors, but they're still, according to Blair and Carroll, the most important, because like there's also inertia in the behavior of businesses. And then in terms of creating business retention expansion programs, Blair and Carroll suggest to create a questionnaire to interview the team, conducting interviews of the target market, and analyze and develop long-term strategies, and follow up with monitoring and evaluation programs. So just to make sure that the business is still on the right track. So in summary, for business location, local policies are oriented toward improving existing businesses, or should be oriented toward improving existing businesses, rather than taking businesses in another area. So transport cost minimizing models are usually followed by firms, and in firms will locate where the cost is the least. Basically, firms are just, as you would expect, very profit oriented, and they would always want to locate wherever it's profitable. So low production costs may encourage a firm to locate away from a transportation cost minimizing point. So again, encouraged by profits, and then firms are generally profit oriented and risk averse. So they want to make the most profit or revenue without putting themselves at risk. So this is why you have a lot of businesses that tend to stay in one place, because movement is very, very risky. Okay. And then, like we talked about, instead the tools to entice businesses, we had a discussion on corporate income tax holidays, urban development action grant, enterprise zones, and tax increment financing. You already have the notes for that. And finally, we can get into the basics of a market area. So market, we'll talk about, our main reference is Rodriguez 2020 in the transportation book. This will discuss market size and shape, economic definition of market area, competition over market areas, and geographic information systems, and market area analysis. So we have about 30 minutes for that. Okay, so let me just go through this book. So I'll share this with you guys over here. And I've been trying to go over it for the past few weeks because it's a bit technical, but I'll explain as we go. So the geography of transport systems mainly focus on the importance of infrastructure and how it impacts economic, urban development, urban growth, and also to some extent economic development. So market size and shape. Each economic activity has a location, but the various demands, raw materials, labor, parts, services, etc., and flows, each location generates also have a spatial dimension called a market area. So again, going back to that importance of location, geography, and the impact of that to economic development, as well as the creation of cities. So we'll just use this definition for market area. So market area is a surface over which a demand or supply offered at a specific location is expressed. So they have to be specific location. For example, a factory, it includes the areas where it produces, where its products are shipped. For a retail store, it is the tributary area from which it draws its customers. So I'm getting a bit thirsty. I have water. I have some water here. Transportation is particularly important in a market area analysis because it impacts the location of economic activities as well as their accessibility. So the size of a market area is a function of its threshold and range. So we have a few more terms to go through. So what is a market threshold? So it's the minimum demand necessary to support an economic activity, such as a service. So for example, a restaurant, how many people does a restaurant need to survive? That's the market threshold. Since each demand has a distinct location, a threshold has a direct spatial dimension. The size of a market has a direct relationship with its threshold. And then the other item here is the market range. So it's the maximum distance each unit of demand is willing to travel. Like, for example, customers willing to travel to reach a service, or the maximum distance a product can be shipped to a customer. So it's just people coming in or products going out to people. I think I really need a glass of water. And the range is a function of transport cost, time, or convenience in view of intervening opportunities to be profitable. A market must have a range higher than its threshold. So that's a key item here. So the market range must be higher than its threshold, and there'll be a diagram in a bit. So in the case of a single market area, it is the shape of an isotropic plane. So basically just a flat circle. Is a simple concentric circle having the market range as the radius. Since the purpose of commercial activities is to service all the available demand when possible, and that the range of many activities is limited, more than one location is required to service an area. For such a purpose, a hexagonal shaped structure of market areas represents the optimal market shape under a condition of isotropy. So that's a something that we'll discover as we go along. This shape can be modified by 9 non-isotropic conditions, mainly related to variations in density and accessibility. Okay. So how you use this idea, it highlights the different topics here. So we'll have a visual representation of market threshold and range, which I think is very important. So you have the market threshold here in blue and the market range in sort of white. And you have a distance here. The distance of the market threshold is dt, and the distance of market range is dr. And we have a short description over here. So the above figure considers a uniform distribution of customers on an isotropic plane. I think we need a definition of isotropic plane here. Basically, an isotropic plane is one in which all physical parameters are the same at any point in any direction. So the terrain is perfectly flat everywhere and equally as well. So drained so that any area of the land is equitably suitable for any purpose other than differences due to proximity to the CBD. So basically, it's a concept where isotropic plane, there's no difference, everything is flat, anything can happen. So it's very kind of, the idea is all of these spaces from dt to dr, the distance, they're all the same. Nothing is different. So on an isotropic plane, a single market where goods and services may be purchased. So if each customer is willing to purchase 1 unit per day of like whatever that product is, and the market needs to sell 11 units per day to cover its cost, production of the whatever product and acquisition of the raw materials, then the market threshold would allow the yellow circle. I don't know. I can see the yellow. I think the yellow circles are here. Yellow circle is the dt. I think it's blue in the image from the market. So, however, 29 customers per day, including customers 1 and 2, patronize the market, of which an extra 18 are beyond the threshold distance. So they contribute directly to the profitability of the market, and then the market range of all these customers is below distance dr, or the market range. Beyond this range, customers are willing to go to this market, such as customer 3. So just going back to the diagram again. So within the market threshold, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 customers. So that's the minimum requirement for the market to, or the business to survive. And within the market threshold, you have customer 1. And then market range defines the other people outside the market threshold. And this will be the market range. So everyone outside the threshold is but still willing to go to your business, they're included in the market range. So such as customer number 2 here, where you see my mouse. Everyone unwilling to go to the store, like for example, this is a restaurant. For example, person number 3, if they don't want to go to the store anymore, and given the fact that this is a flat plane, no difference whatsoever, they are outside the market range. So the question is here, how do they determine how many people go to their store and where do they come from? So let's find that out. So there are different thresholds according to the variety of products or services that can be offered in market. A threshold may be as low as 250 people for a convenience store, or as high as 150,000 people for a theater. If the demand falls below the threshold level, the activity will run at a loss and eventually fail. So you've seen this in COVID, where nobody went out and a lot of businesses failed. So if the demand increases above the minimum, the activity will increase its profits, which may also lead to the entry of competitors. The frequency of use of goods and services is important in assessing the extent of the market threshold, which is often linked to income level. So a movie theater needing 500 visitors per night will require a threshold population of, for example, 150,000 if the average number of visits is 1 yearly. But if the average number of visits is 3 per year, the population threshold drops to 50,000. So it's divided by 3. So the same population can support 3 movie theaters instead of 1. So if there are 150,000 people who visit the theater 3 times a year, And for example, a theater needs 150,000 people, or what they call this, needs 500 visitors per night, which requires a population of 150,000. And if the 150,000 visits the theater 3 times, they can support three different theaters, is what they're saying over here. So this is basically the factor that determines threshold and range is demand, but threshold is the bare minimum. So what the book was trying to say before in the paragraph before that, the market range must be beyond the threshold, is that if the range is lower than the threshold, then it's no longer the market range. Like it's no longer the same thing. The range must be outside the threshold. How they determine that threshold, it's probably explained here in the next few slides. Okay. So the next slide here is market size and threshold. So for example, you have a village, a town, a city, and a metropolitan area. And then the threshold for a village is about 1,000. Threshold for a town is 10,000. City is 100,000. And then metropolitan area is 500,000. So there's a direct relationship between market size and threshold, which impacts the geography of retail. Each urban center needs a threshold population that varies according to its size to support its activities. Large cities have important threshold, so there may be few on a specific territory, while many small villages exist. Basically, these are just kind of estimates, not really hard figures. But for example, for a retail store or a mall to locate in an area, they must have a specific population. And the market range is, they still didn't say how much the market range will be. I'll just go over to market profitability. Excuse me. You have two images over here. So a market area has a range and a threshold that determine the profitability of an economic activity, the profitability of an economic activity that it is generating. So the threshold is the minimal market area an activity must have to stay in operation. So muna ang blue here on the left side. And then we have a situation where the threshold is larger than the range. So we'll just explain that in a bit. So the threshold represents the spatial threshold of profitability, where spatial attributes such as population density and income have an important influence in its assessment. So the range, the market range, is the effective market area of an activity from which it draws its customer base. On graph A here on the left, activity P will be more profitable since its threshold is inferior to its range. So meaning what they call this, if the range is larger than the threshold of that given market, that means it's creating a profit. Meanwhile, on graph B, activity P is not profitable because its range is inferior to its threshold. So if the range becomes lower than the threshold, therefore, the business does not have enough customers to survive. So that's what happens when the range becomes lesser than the threshold. So these are market range and market threshold. So they're just basic concepts on that. Next, it's already 4:50. The optimal shape of a market area. So let's see here. There's 5 examples. You have 10-kilometer radius. In B, you have several 10-kilometer radius sort of markets, not near each other, almost scattered randomly. Then in C, you have 10-kilometer radius isotropic circles, 20 kilometers apart. So they create their kind of, what they call this, tangential, or they're touching the edges of the circle to each other. Graph D is several 10-kilometer radius markets intersecting at 17 kilometers. And then finally, E, which was stated as the most efficient shape for a market area, the hexagons. So the above examples consider an isotropic plane. So flat plane with nothing, everything is the same, with commercial activity having a range of 10 kilometers. If the activity is alone, A, that's here, it will simply offer services to an area corresponding to its range, while the rest of the territory will not be served. This situation remains similar if a limited number of activities are present. B, so this is what happens in, I think we see this in Cebu, where you have like different Jollibees, different KFCs, and not really no sort of competitors being attracted to each other. I think this happens more in the rural areas. However, the purpose of commercial activities is to service the entire demand. So if possible, as any additional demand represents a market opportunity to be captured. So in what they call this, eventually, most businesses would tend to group up like C because there's opportunity to be captured. This requires the whole territory to be serviced by a set of evenly spaced markets in a territorial isotropy condition. So this is still kind of just in simple terms, the beginnings of like a city. So typically they would locate at their maximum range because they don't want to they don't want to lose customers. But eventually, solutions C and D are what they call this. Sorry. However, solutions C and D are unacceptable since in the first case, a C, where am I? Some areas are left non-serviced, and in the second cases, ranges are overlapping. So C and D are not efficient. The optimal solution to this spatial coverage problem is developing hexagonal market areas E, representing the optimal shape for market areas with full spatial coverage. So there's no gaps, there's no overlaps. So that's why the, I guess the proposed or the theory of the optimal shape of the market area are hexagonal. And then let's see here. Non-isotropic conditions and the shape of market areas. So this is another short discussion. So you have isotropic condition, meaning the ideal condition. This doesn't happen in reality. And then the non-isotropic conditions, and then modified market areas. So there are three scenarios. Under isotropic conditions, where it's all flat, all even, each market has the same polygonal and evenly spaced area. This theoretical condition is rarely found in reality. So this is just a concept, like a best case scenario. The most important, the two most important non-isotropic conditions impacting the shape of market areas are differences in density, depicted here in as concentric circles. So you have here non-isotropic, and accessibility, depicted here as the presence of a road. So you have road and density. So the most attractive is where density is high and there's access, basically a CBD or a center. Then the modified market areas are the possible outcome of such non-isotropic conditions. So we have, basically, we had the theory that market areas in ideal conditions would be hexagonal, but in reality, they would look more like this, the uneven, what do you call, polygons, basically. Okay. So just another definition of a market, like more specific definition of a market area. So a market depends on the relationship between supply and demand. It acts as a price fixing mechanism for goods and services. And as we all know, demand is a quantity, of a good or service that consumers are willing to buy at a given price. So it is high if the price is the price of the commodity is it is high if the price of the commodity is low in relation to its usefulness, while in the opposite situation, a high price means that what do you call this? High price demand is low. So outside market price demands can generally be fueled by the following factors. So this statement's a bit confusing. If it is high, the quantity of a good or service, demand is the quantity of good or service that consumers are willing to buy at a given price. So demand is high if the price on a commodity is low. Okay, that makes more sense. While while in the opposite situation, if demand is low, the price of that object becomes higher. So like the idea that demand is the higher the price, the less the people demand it. The lower the price, the more people demand it. And there are outside market price. Demand can be generally be influenced by the following factors. So utility, while goods and services are while goods and services that are necessities, such as food, do not see much fluctuation in demand, the demand for items deemed of lesser utility, even frivolous, would vary according to income and economic cycles. So there are important differences between discretionary and non-discretionary spending. So utility items tend to have the same price. However, what do you call this? Non-utility items, like frivolous items, would vary depending on income and economic cycles. Income level. So income level, especially disposable income, is directly proportional to consumption. A population with a high income level has more purchasing power than a population with low income. So we can see this in developed countries where they have more malls, more kind of markets, because there's a higher disposable income in the general population. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, our economic activity is a bit lower because our disposable income is also lower. And here's a popular one we hear in the news: inflation. So involves an increase in the money supply in relation to the availability of assets, commodities, goods, and services. Although inflation directly influences prices, inflation is outside the supply-demand relationship and decreases the purchasing power if wages do not adjust accordingly. So this is just a keynote here. It's outside the supply-demand relationship. So it's a bit more of an external factor if wages do not increase accordingly. So in Japan, they offset their sort of inflation by adjusting their wages. So notice in Japan, they don't have 100 peso bills. They start off with 1,000, 2,000, 10,000. So they increase their wages to sort of accommodate the inflation. So taxation, sale and value-added taxes can have an inhibiting effect on the sales of goods and services as they add to production costs and claim a share of the customer's income. So it's higher items, higher production costs. Then finally, savings. The quantity of capital available in savings can provide a potential to acquire consumption goods. Also, people may refrain from consuming if saving is a priority, namely in periods of economic hardship. The wide availability of credit in a fiat currency system has considerably skewed the relationships between saving and consumption, as it promotes current consumption levels but at the expense of future consumption. This one is very technical. Even today, I'm still having trouble trying to understand this statement. Okay, so let's just go through supply and demand really quickly. Okay, it's already 5 o'clock. I'll just go through a few more. Let's just go through this page. So according to the conventional economic theory, market price is fixed by the following mechanism. So we have demand, supply, and equilibrium price. So we have the demand curve here on the left side, which is green. And it states that, I think as we all remember, the demand curve illustrates a variation of a demand Q in relation to the variation of price P. So the demand is Q, the price is P. So P1, high price, low demand. P2, low price, high demand. So if you go to the right, the demand is higher. If you go up, the price is higher. And then the supply curve illustrates supply variation according to price P. This function is characterized by a directly proportional curve where supply increases, price also increases. So as we remember, price 1 here is in the lower end, supply is also on the lower end. As price increases, the quantity of a good or service also increases. And then what determines the price of a specific good is both a combination of the demand of that good and the supply of that good. So good or product, sorry. So basically the intersection of demand curve and the supply curve represents the equilibrium price, PE, where quantity, QE of goods will be sold. Changes in the market regarding demand supply, moving the curves, the D and S curves left or right will change equilibrium price. So there are a lot of factors that can, economic factors that can change demand and supply, but for the reasons of our kind of locating market area, we are looking for that equilibrium price range, where demand and supply intersect. Okay, so we have here the next item, delimitation and variations in market areas. So this graph is fairly important. So say you have three businesses, that business 1, 2, or three locations, location 1, 2, and 3. So market areas are an important component of regional spatial organization. The above figure considers a simple region composed of three equidistant cities along an axis. So that's 1, 2, and 3. And this is their sort of X and Y. Where's X and Y? In example A, it is assumed that three cities are of the same size and economic consumption, which means they have the same level of attractiveness or influence because of a phenomenon called implied linear friction or distance. Basically, it means the further away a location is from a city, the lower the level of influence. So if they're all equidistant, they all have the same influence. So each city has a cone of influence that decreases with distance. And at some point, this influence becomes negligible. So city 1 has an influence extending to both directions for simplicity's sake. And this influence is displayed on only one axis. So this is the X here. Where am I? Okay. Which overlaps with the influence of cities 2 and 3. At some point, the influence of the other two cities become higher than its own. Consequently, the market area or area of influence of city 1 is bounded by X and Y, which are known to be the points of indifference, a location where influence is the same. So we have here the first point of indifference is X. The second point of indifference is Y. So there is really no positive or negative as to whether a person will go to city 3 or city 1 or city 1 to city 2. So that's the point of indifference. Okay, so market areas can change in can vary in size for two main reasons. The first is because one city has more influence, also called weight, than others. A larger city is an example of that. The second is because the friction of distance, this phenomenon called friction of distance, may not be uniform over a region, implying that some cities may be more accessible than others and better serviced by transportation. In example B here, let's see. City 1 is assumed to be more important than the two others, extending its market area from X to X prime and from Y to Y prime. So that's what's going on here. You see the new cone of influence. This is the triangle above city 1, and then the new location is further expanded. The new market area is expanded from X to X prime and Y to Y prime. So expanding on the left and the right. And then in example C, city 1 has better accessibility, lower friction slope than the two others, again extending its market area. Larger cities are usually more accessible, implying that both effects can be observed in B and C, are happening currently, like in the real world. So if you see here, if city 1 has better accessibility and let's see here, better influence, it would further increase its what do you call this, market area. So I'll just take a quick screenshot like this. Okay, so in reality, according to this book, market areas look like this. Oh, sorry, just need to clean it up a bit. Brush size, okay, here. Not the thickest brush size, sorry. Yeah, that's the thickest. So there are some cities that have wider cones of influence, like this, city 1, then, for example, less developed cities or less active cities, like cities 2 and 3. And it's constantly changing, growing, and decreasing. Supply is a number of goods and services that a firm or individuals are able to produce, taking into account selling price. Outside price, supply can generally be influenced by the following factors. Profit, number one is profit. Even if the sales of products are limited, if profits are high, an activity providing goods or services may be satisfied with the situation. This is particularly the case for luxury goods. If profits are low, an activity can cease, thus lowering the supply. Then the other factor is competition. Competition is one of the most important mechanisms for establishing prices. Where competition is absent, an oligopoly, or where there's only one sort of main business provider, or when there's too much over competition, prices artificially influence supply and demand because what do you call this? In an oligopoly, prices is determined by just um, and one firm or one business. And when there are too many businesses, prices is no longer what do you call this? Um, what's the best way to explain this? Mm, Prices are no longer in the hands of the businesses, I think would be a good description of that. According to the market principle, supply and demand are determined by the price, which is an equilibrium of both. It is often called the equilibrium price or market price. This price is a compromise between the desire for firms to sell all of their goods and services at the highest price possible and the desire for consumers to buy goods and services at the lowest possible price. For many economists, the market is a point where goods and services are exchanged and do not have a specific location, since it is simply an abstraction of the relationships between supply and demand. It is important to underline that since most of the time consumers must move in order to acquire a good or service, now, the producer must also ship a commodity to a location where the consumer can buy it, a store or a residence in the case of online shopping. The concept of distance must thus be considered concomitantly, I don't know what that word means, with the concept of the market. In those conditions, the real price includes the market price plus the transportation price from the market to the location of its final consumption. So unfortunately, I think the close is already 5:09. I'll go further on this next week. But there are several principles. This is where we get to calculating actually the distance, but I'm kind of scared looking at it. You have Hotlin's principle of market competition, Rayleigh's law, and Huff's law. There's also GIS methods to estimate market areas, optimal location throughout by number of freight distribution centers, but I think we're running out of time. I think I'll just do, I think I'll do GIS. Okay, GIS methods estimate market areas. So the above figure represents different methods that can be applied in a GIS or geographic information system to estimate market areas. It considers a store or any location offering a service and its customer base. So the first one is by concentric circles. The next one is share by polygon. Next is star map, spatial smoothing, transport distance, and manual polygon. So there are a few samples here. So buffer creation, a common GIS procedure associates each concentric circle with a distance or time value. They can include the threshold and range of a store. In the above figure here, concentric circles. 3 circles have been created with 5 minutes distance increment each. Another dimension of this method concerns Hessian polygons, where the market area is calculated as halfway distances from location of other competitors. Well, that wasn't very helpful. Yeah, I think I need some time to like absorb this information. The other one here, transport distance measures accessibility expressed in distance or time. It doesn't really tell you how to do a measurement. New layers created where each so there are different theories here. We need more time to like go over them. And I think the best way to go over this resource is starting with the first graph and then going over to the next one and so on and so forth. So this one is Hotlin's principle of market competition. And this one has an equation. So let's see here. Law of retail gravitation. So you have to do some, let's see. algebra, and I think it's calculus at this point. 70 kilometers per hour, turn the print halfway, you its allocations. Rayleigh's law aims to find a point of indifference between two locations so that the trading area of each can be determined. This point is assumed to be a function of the distance between two locations pondered by respective size. Population often used for this purpose. A location can thus be more attractive than the other. So just population size. So the equation is the distance over 1 plus the square root of population 1, population B, meaning the smaller population, and population A, the larger population. Oh, it's actually not that bad. So using this equation, distance over 1 plus the square root of population B and then population A, B meaning the smaller population, you can actually get a distance. So let's try, I'll try this. So maybe I'll just omit the quiz because I'm still absorbing the material. Let's try this. Let's see Cebu City. Let's say Cebu City is the market area. Cebu City population is, how do I'll use an Excel file. So this might actually be the solution I was looking for. Let's see Cebu City, and let's say Mandaue City. Mandaue City. Let's look at their population. I think Cebu City is 900 something. 922,611. Let's zoom in a bit over here. Why is the text so big? Text size. Let's make it 12. I'll zoom in a bit more. Where's my zoom? Oh. And then Mandaue City is 362,654. 362,354. Okay, let me check. My numbers are 362,654. 654. Then let's make everything 12. This is larger. I have different fonts. Okay, and then we input the what's this? Oh, sorry, clicking so many things. The Rayleigh's law equation. Market area. Close. Market area. So equals, let's see, the distance between Lapu-Lapu and Cebu. I'll just clear distance. Let's see, I'll find like a center of Cebu. Maybe here's a capital. I'll measure distance, capital, and then where is the Mandaue City Hall? For the sake of this, can actually, I'll use Cebu Ayala and then SM. Where's SM? But SM is still in Cebu. What about Cebu City, Ayala, and Park Mall? Park Mall definitely in Mandaue. Distance is 3.23 kilometers. Market distance. .23 kilometers. So it should be 3.23 divided by 1 plus how do you do square root in Excel? Square root Excel. How does it look like? Here, there's a square root function. Okay. 1 plus root of smaller population divided by a larger population. Smaller population divided by larger population. And that's the number. So the point of indifference, let's see here. Under such circumstances, the point of indifference is 4.9 kilometers from location A. So let's see, location A nato is Ayala Center, and we have a number that is Ayala Cebu, 1.99 from Ayala Cebu. Where is the 1.99? Let me close this. 1.99 is somewhere around here. It's around 2 kilometers. So in this scenario, I'll just take a screenshot. According to this law, for example, just imagine that Cebu City only Ayala Cebu only caters to people in Cebu City. The market area of Ayala Cebu would be around 1.99 kilometers. So my circle is a bit messy. So it's about this area here. That includes North Reclamation area, Capital area, IT Park, etc. And then the market area for example, Park Mall in Mandaue City would be the 3.23 minus 1.99 is 1.24. So something like that. So if we follow Riley's law. So this is an example of how to determine. Finally, we have the answer, how to determine a market area. So just assuming that this is the market area of, or the demographic of Ayala Cebu is 900,000 and the demographic of Park Mall is 300,000. This is how their market areas would look like. So this is their, I would assume this is their market threshold. And then their market range even goes further beyond that, because as a Cebuano, I live in the Talamban area, which is even further away. This is Cebu IT Park. Talamban is even further away. I still would prefer to go to Ayala Cebu than Park Mall, mostly because Ayala Cebu has more facilities. Park Mall doesn't have a theater. Park Mall, I think, only just has a grocery, and the selection of goods is also not as complete. So I think we can keep going. Let's see. I'm kind of excited to see what the other equation is now. I was kind of scared, but now I'm excited. Okay, let's look at Huff's law. So finally, we figured out what are some ways to determine market area. Okay, so this looks a bit scary. So let's see. Huff's law retail model assumes that customers have a choice to patronize a location in view of alternatives. Thus, a market area is expressed as continuous probabilities, as a continuous probabilities line, unless there are no alternative locations. The indifference point becomes a point of equal probability that a customer will patronize one location or another. In the above figure, a customer has a greater chance, 0.71, to patronize location A at midpoint than location B at 0.29, I guess 29%. The advantage of Huff's retail model is that it leaves room for customer service. So the equation is point of indifference equals population A over population over what's D? There's demand D. Oh no, sorry, that's population A over distance A divided by, what the heck is this? Oh, it's summation of, let's see, I'm just looking at the equation here. 250 is population A, then midpoint. Okay, the midpoint distance plus population A. Okay. So let's try this. So I'll open my Excel. So let's apply what we call Huff's retail model. These are all like ancient 1963. But it's better than nothing. So let's keep the same populations. Midpoint of 3.23, I'll just divide that by 2. We'll get that divided by 2. Then the market area is, I'll just highlight this. And then market area. Or not, it's not really the market area of cargo, it's the point of indifference. And difference. We'll just move the exam to next week, as I really needed to discuss this week, because then we can't understand the next topic. Okay. Point of indifference. Maybe I'll just do a calculations problem for you guys next week. Okay, so the equation is population A over distance A. Let's see, population A over distance. There's only one distance, divided by population A over distance A plus population B over distance A. So again, with this equation, sorry, that's not the right one. Plus, let's put it in a parenthesis just to make sure it does the equation. That divided by that. Okay, so how do we interpret this? 0.71. So what is this? Let's call it. Becomes a point of equal power. The customer is ready to patronize A at the okay. I'll just call this continuous probability design. I'll just call this probability. Where is my probability to go to Cebu? But probability C. Or okay. So this states that, let me clean this up. This probability Mandawi. Mandawi, right? Okay. Equals 1 minus okay. So according to Huff's retail model, Maybe I'll just change color. With these sort of numbers, like populations, Cebu City, there's a higher chance for someone to go to the Cebu City Ayala. I'll just put this Ayala at 72% than going to Park Mall, which I can say that just based on my experience, I would still prefer to go to Ayala. Almost 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10 of the if given the chance to go to a mall, almost always I always go to Ayala, like every time, Ayala every time. So maybe your assignment could be just not really like assignment, but maybe for next week I'll ask you to locate a mall or a city, a mall within a city, and then check if these laws apply. Because here in what do you call this? Let me insert another slide here. Both laws say that I would prefer to go to Ayala. So point of difference for Ayala, point of indifference, Park Mall equals na minus kana. Slightly more, like almost 0.6 kilometers more attractive si Ayala than Park Mall. So it kind of holds true. And I think the main reason is population size. So the larger population, obviously, the more people would go there. So it's kind of, I guess, like super obvious na. Larger population means more customer base. And just based on these two old laws, at least we have now a distance, an actual number. Whether we can apply this to the in real life, still up for debate. We'll still figure that out. I'll go through these different principles, but it's nice to see how population impacts attractiveness of a mall or economic activity. So I guess in summary, we have 1 minute left. I'll show the equations here on screen. Wait, maybe this slide would be the good side to end on. So the basics of a market area is that if you have a larger population, you have a larger market area. So this is connected with the idea of a market threshold and a market range. The larger your kanang threshold, basically the threshold size doesn't matter, because as long as you have a stable threshold, the business will survive. The idea of that having a threshold is that you need those numbers to make the business survive. If it goes lower than that, the range decreases and the business fails. Now, in terms of market area, we can see that population directly influences market area, such that if you have a larger population, more often than not, you would have a larger market area. So that's just the basics of it. And we have two equations that you can try out. These are old, but there's a few more here. Optimal location and throughput by number of freight distribution centers. So this was a bit more, I think, interesting. You are using freight centers. So in Cebu City, we have several ports that I would think would classify as freight centers. We have the Cebu International Port. We have another one here. This one is for the transportation of people, like Pier 1, Pier 2, 1, 2, and 3. I think this would also include airports. So if you look at Cebu City, Manila, National Capital Region, and Davao, I think they are serviced by not just ports, but also airports and kanang seaports. So basically, the more ports, I would assume, the more economic activity. So I'll just read this very quickly. Freight distribution is a market servicing activity, implying that the nature and structure of the market will have an important impact of how it is serviced. Freight distribution is deeply embedded within its regional geography. So two related variables can help define the level of service performed by a distribution network composed of distribution centers, each covering a specific portion of the territory. The first is the average distance to customers, which defines the market size and delivery and return distance. The second is lead time, which is the time it takes for a distribution center to deliver the goods once an order has been placed. So the above four maps represent four optimal scenarios in location of distribution centers within the United States based on their number. It is based on two fundamental assumptions. The first is that market potential is directly related to accessible population. The second is that deliverables are done by trucking using the highway network. Then it represents a standard P median location problem where a P number of facilities must be located to minimize total transportation costs. So let's see here. We have there's a PDF map included. Okay, we have three. This is what happens when we have three distribution centers. Average distance to customers about 378 miles. Lead time is 1.29 days. When you add two more distribution centers for a total of 5, the distance to customer is reduced, 264 miles. Lead time is also reduced by 1.13 days. At 7 distribution centers, average distance is now 216 miles. Average lead time is now 1.07 days. And then finally, at 10 distribution centers with the following percentage, average distance is 173 miles or with a lead time of 1.04 days. And then here, for the 3 distribution centers, optimal locations would be blah, blah, blah. Lead time is reduced. So the frequency of a service is an important variable that influences the suitable number of distribution centers servicing a supply chain. A low frequency level tends to require fewer distribution centers than a high frequency level sort of business. A limited number of distribution centers also implies longer distances for empty returns, which is costly. So basically, more distribution centers means reduced transportation costs. And I think that's and then the last one was the GIS, which is basically different drawings. And we just need to, I think I can summarize this for you next week. So no quiz, so I just wanted to highlight that. So we have actually found a way to determine market area using Riley's law and Huff's law. They're a bit old, but I think it's serviceable, especially it's written in a book that was published in 2020. So now you have some idea, at least some tool to determine market area, which really was the goal of our discussion today. So next week, we'll be talking about agglomerates cluster, how regions gain competitive advantages, let's see, location of economic activities, and hopefully also, that's a lot, strategies at the neighborhood level. The other ones, I think I have to do that together with our GIS review. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So I will stop presenting here. Sorry, I didn't really have time for a quiz, but I will share this video with you guys. So we'll have a short quiz, maybe the first, then we'll do a recap next meeting with these equations, and then we'll proceed to the next topics. Okay, so at least na